أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين، آمين رب العالمين. أما بعد، قال مولانا إمام أبو الحسن موسى بن جعفر الكاظم صلوات الله وسلامه عليه: إن فاطمة صديقة شهيدة، صدق الإمام وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. Ahibbai, you find that in regards to the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, the differences that have been recorded by the historians in regards to the date of her martyrdom is one which is unique. And you will find that no other personality within history has had so many possible recorded dates of her martyrdom like Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra. You will see that historians from amongst the Mukhalifin, from the Amma as well as the Khassa, together with all the Masadir, have come up with reported dates 21 in number, stating the possible dates of the Shahada, Istishhad, the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra. Historians have mentioned that there are 21 possible dates that could indicate the date of the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra. And it becomes important for us to understand this debate from a number, or to understand how the historians come up with these numbers and which ones we need to depend upon or commemorate for a number of reasons. First of all, you find that what is mashhur within our communities, what is well known within our communities, is that the Fatemiyah, a term that is generally given to commemorate the martyrdom of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen. There are three mashhur dates for the Fatemiyah. You have the 8th of Rabiul Thani, you have the 13th of Jamad al-Ula, and you have the 3rd of Jamad al-Thani. The first Fatemiyah, second Fatemiyah, third Fatemiyah. And perhaps people come forward and they say that, why do we celebrate Fatemiyah 3 times in a year? Number 2, how is it that one woman could have 3 possible dates of martyrdom? How is it that a woman who is such a central figure in Islam, the daughter of Rasulullah, the one in which there is agreement from all sects of the Muslimin, that she is Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, how is it that the Muslims are not aware and are not able to pinpoint in accuracy one date for her martyrdom? How is this possible? When you come and you look into non-Islamic history in general, if you find any personality who has had an impact in a particular town, in a particular city, who has had an impact on a global basis, when that person dies, historically speaking, you will not find differences on the date of his death. For example, Gandhi in India, for his efforts, for example, in liberating India, colonial times, being a celebrity, being a fatherhood figure, The date of his death is well recorded. When you come to many personalities in history who have given a contribution or made a contribution to humanity or any sort of contribution, political or social, you find that there is no dispute in their date of death. Especially with the presidents of the nation, you will not find anybody dispute dates in that sense. So why is it that when it comes to Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, even the date of her istishhad is not agreed upon? 21 possible dates, as we said, combining the masadir of the Amma and the Khassa. How do we understand this? Why is it that there are multiple commemorations for Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, and which one should we depend on, or which one should we give weight to when it comes to commemoration? Insha'Allah, this is the bahath, or this is the outline that we want to discuss in this majlis for tonight, and all of it with the barakat of Allah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When we begin to understand, or when we begin to analyze and research the possible dates and why there is ikhtilafat, why there is differences and multiple dates recorded for the istishhad of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, you will see, number one, when it comes to Islamic history, multiple possible dates for istishhad, for her martyrdom, is not only restricted to Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. You will find that historically speaking, when it comes to establishing the birth dates and the martyrdom dates of a number of the ma'soomeen, even outside of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, you'll find that there is great ikhtilaf. You find that there is great differences that are recorded by historians. You have a look, for example, the istishhad or the shahada of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. You find certain historians narrate that he was martyred in the beginning part of the month of Shahr al-Safar. You find other historians who come and say that no, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba was martyred towards the end of Shahr al-Safar. Even when it comes to the Shahada of Rasulullah, you find that Muslims have a difference of opinion. Was the Prophet martyred on the 26th of Safar? We have a qawl, or we have a narration or a historical recording for the 27th of Safar, 28th of Safar, which is the most depended upon. And you even have Muslims who have gone and stated that the date of the martyrdom of the Prophet being 10th or 11th of Rabiul Awwal. For you find that when it comes to multiplicity of possible dates or multiple possible dates for either birth or for shahada, the issue is not restricted to Sayyidah Zahra. Rather, you find historians have differed on a number of other personalities. Now, having said this, there is a qaida and there are certain indications that allow you to establish which is the most mashhur and which is perhaps the most authentic of these dates. This is number one. Number two, we have to understand how history used to be recorded. Historical dates during the early times of Islam and pre-Islam, historical dates were not recorded in the way that we record dates today. Like how you have the 31st of January 2020. You write it down, the number 31, and then you have January and 2020 in its numerical form. Historically speaking, in the Middle East, during pre-Islam and in the early times of Islam, history was not recorded like this. History was recorded in a far different and unique manner. Number one, they never had a set time for the year. Like we have, for example, 1999, 2000, 2015, 2018. In pre-Islamic times, the historical date or date years were not recorded in this manner. Rather, the year was recorded by benchmarking that period in time with a certain event that had changed the history of the time. So for example, when you refer back to the historical history of the Holy Prophet and you read the books of history in regards to Rasulullah, when you look up the date of Rasulullah, you will find that historians record that Rasulullah was born in which year? Amul Fil, the year of the elephants. Yani this event of the elephants and the attacking of the Kaaba, the attempted attack of the Kaaba, was an event that changed the landscape of the Middle East. So this massive event now became a benchmark through which people would measure and count the following days and the years to come. Hence, you find that when it comes to recording the wilada or the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, you find the books of history will say he was born 30 years after Amul Fil, 30 years after the year of the elephant. So the years were recorded by way of benchmark. A certain event that has changed the geopolitical nature of the area would be used as a benchmark through which years are then calculated. Amul Fil. And you find that this is not only exclusive to Islamic history, but this was also a practice within non-Islamic history. When you come and you look at our dates that we use today, 2020 AD. What is AD? After death. After death of who? The supposed death. After death of Nabi Isa. Hence, the crucifixion of Nabi Isa was used as a major point in time through which years would then be calculated. And similarly, when you go back to other parts of history, you will find when it comes to the history of Nabi Musa, for example, you will find, for example, 1000 BC. BC meaning what? Before Christ, before the birth or before the advent of Christ. Meaning that the birth of Christ and the death of Christ, these were massive geopolitical or historical events that took place, which would then be used as a benchmark to calculate the future dates to come. So the same thing is applicable when it comes to Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. When it comes to understanding or pinpointing the death or the exact date of her martyrdom, number one, we understand that the year is calculated as per the death of Rasulullah. So similarly, like the way Amul Fil was a benchmark to calculate the years and the days to come, the martyrdom of Rasulullah itself became a benchmark through which date and years would be counted. Hence, if somebody was born, for example, on the 10th of Rabiul Awwal, 11 AH, what would happen? Historians would say that he was born on the assumption or on the basis that Rasulullah was martyred on the 28th of Safar. And if this child has been born, for example, on the 10th of Rabiul Awwal, they would say he was born 12 days after the death of the Prophet. This is how the dates were recorded. This is how the calendar year worked. So, based on this understanding, when you have the hadith that comes and tells you that Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra lived for 40 days after the martyrdom of the Holy Prophet. Look at the benchmark for understanding the calendar year, the death of the Prophet. So when the historian comes and tells you that Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra lived for 40 days after the death of the Holy Prophet, straight away there is differences within the historians, because some historians will say that the Prophet passed away on 28th Safar, which makes her Shahada date 8th of Rabiul Thani. And then you have others who says Rabiul Awwal. So that means the dates begin to change just on understanding or benchmarking it as per the Shahada date of Rasulullah. This is one thing that we need to understand. As the date of Rasulullah's Shahada varies, the following historians then calculate the date of the istishhad of Sayyidah Zahra based on that variant. This is number one. Inshallah, we are all together. Number two, you find that history, or historically speaking, dates were not recorded numerically. Dates were actually recorded with alphabets. So if you wanted to say, for example, 5th of Rabiul Awwal, for example, 5th of Rabiul Awwal, 20 years after the death of Rasulullah, you would not write the number 5 and then Rabiul Awwal and then the year, for example, 11 AH. There were no numerals that were used. Historical dates were recorded using alphabets. So what would happen is the word 5th Rabiul Awwal, the number 5 would not be written in its numerical sense 5. It would actually be written out as khamsa. Kha, Mim, Sin, for example. So the dates were recorded per alphabet. So imagine if you have 18th of January, nobody would write 1/8 January. They would actually spell out the number 18, EIGHTEEN, and then January. So if we understand that dates were actually written out in their alphabetical sense rather in their numerical sense, you find that this opens up the door to a number of challenges when it comes to understanding or finding out the true date of the Shahada of Rasulullah. Why? Because we have within our riwayah that says, she passed away on the 3rd of Jamadul Thani, and you have the 13th of Jamadul Thani. 13th, of Jamadul Ula, and the 3rd of Jamadul Thani. So within the manuscript, you would not find the number 3 or the number 13. What you would find is, it would say, Thalith Jamadul Thani, for example, and Thalatha Ashara, yani Thalata'ash, Thalatha Ashara of the first month. What is the difference between Thalatha and Thalatha Ashar? The word Ashara. The word Ashara, Ain, Sheen, Ra, and Ta Marbuta. Manuscripts were not printed out and typed via computer or typewriters or anything of the sort. History was handwritten. It was recorded by hand. And people, students like yourselves within universities, those who have studied history, and those that have experience in dealing with manuscripts, you will see that one of the greatest challenges within a manuscript is trying to understand the font which is present within that manuscript. Keeping in mind that manuscripts were written or dates were recorded using ink that was using the tip of a feather pen. Over time, over not tens of years, not 20 years, not 50 years, over hundreds of years, you find that the ink on this manuscript becomes lesser and lesser in terms of visibility. It takes the bloating of one patch of ink on a word for an entire date to go missing. So you may have manuscripts that mention that the Shahada or the date that Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen passed away on 13th, for example, of Jamadil Ula, on this Thalatha Ashara. If this Ashara has a bloated mark on it, you find that it is unreadable. What happens? The next person who is analyzing the manuscript, the next historian who is analyzing the manuscript, doesn't understand that there is Ashara. What happens is he thinks it's the 3rd. And now you have 3rd within Jamadil Ula and you have 3rd within Jamadul Thani. So you find that this is a very logical approach to understanding. Intum, try it for yourselves. You write a note or you write a letter in a pencil, for example, and you return back to that script, to that paper, to that diary or to that notepad 20, 30 years ago. You find that that pencil writing has faded away, and to read it is a great challenge. So when it comes to the science of reading manuscript, you find that this was a big issue. Number 2, again, you find that when history was recorded, one type of Arabic font was an Arabic font that didn't have the dots on the letters. You find that the difference, for example, between Yazid and Buraid. These are two names in Arabic, Yazid and Buraid. What is the difference between Yazid and Buraid? Yazid, Ya, Za, Ya, and Dal, Yazid. When it comes to Buraid, Ba, Ra, Ya, and Dal. Remove the dots from these letters. Would you be able to differentiate between Yazid and Buraid? No. You take the first letter. Yazid has Ya, 2 dots at the bottom. The first letter of Buraid is Ba, 1 dot at the bottom. If you remove the dots, you can't distinguish between the Ya and the Ba. So you find that a lot of the manuscripts that recorded these dates did not have these dots within the alphabets. And in addition to this, you find that a lot of the dates, when they are recorded, for example, the date that talks about the Shahada of Rasulullah, of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen, for example, 3rd of Jamad al-Thani. 3rd of Jamad al-Thani, they would say Thalatha Madina. Madina is the word. 3 days passed from the beginning of Jamad al-Thani. But when you come towards the end of the month, it would say Thalatha Baqina. 3 days remaining from Jamad al-Thani. So this is how the historians recorded dates. If you are recording a date in the first 15 days, they would use the word Madina. 3 days passed from. And if you are coming towards the end of the month, they would say Baqina. 3 days remaining of the month. If you take the word Madina, Mim, Dad, Ya, and Noon, and compare it with Baqina, Ba, Kaf, Ya, and Noon. Remove the dots. And then add the bloating factor of the ink. You find that it is virtually impossible to distinguish what is the intended meaning within the writing. So you find that when you look at this from a scientific perspective in terms of analyzing manuscripts, and we understand the challenges and the mannerism in which historical dates were recorded, you find that there is majal and there is room for a number of discrepancies and multiple dates to be extracted from this. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is number one, or this is the first reason. The second reason in which the date of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen is not known for sure is that in early history, it was prohibited and forbidden to record history altogether. لا بس عادي حجي إن شاء الله. He's not doing anything. He's running around. No problem. Alhamdulillah. It's the Masjid of Sayyidah Zahra. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tayyib. For you find that there was a prohibition in regards to recording history. We have a text which is known as Man'u Tadween or Man' Tadween al-Hadith, which is authored by Shahristani, where it is stated that as soon as the people undertook the leadership of the Islamic Ummah after Saqifa, there was a ban by the people who had usurped the Khilafah of Amirul Mu'mineen to record and to preserve any historical hadith of Rasulullah. In fact, you have hadith, historical narrations that state that companions of Rasulullah were surrounded. Anyone who has got any scroll of a hadith that has been narrated by Rasulullah, it was collected and it was burnt. It was prohibited to narrate any hadith from Rasulullah. Speaking about Sayyidati Nisa'il Alameen was prohibited within the Islamic world, because anyone who spoke about what happened to Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra was seen to be an enemy of the state, an enemy of the Khilafah. And hence, you find that over time, when a historical event such as the martyrdom of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen has been prohibited to speak about, there then became doubts in regards to the exact date of her Shahada. And you find that there are a number of scholars from within the Mukhalifeen, within the school of the Madrasa of Saqifa, who actually adulterated the books of history and tried to separate the proximity in the dates between the Shahada of Rasulullah and Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. Because the first thing that happens is when the Muslim Ummah comes and sees that the daughter of Rasulullah died at the age of 18, her grave is not known. How is it she died at 18 when she had no historical presence in regards to, there was no historical recording of any sickness? How does a person of 18 just die like this without any cause, without any reason, her grave not knowing? In order to ensure that they would separate her reason of death from those events that happened after Saqifa, they tried to push forward the date of Shahada as far as possible from the events of Saqifa, to show that, or to conceal the reason behind this. For you find that it was prohibited. And this was not only prohibited in the first days of Islam, Baba, up to the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, up to almost 120, 130 years, 140 years after the istishhad, or after the hijrah, after the istishhad of Rasulullah, mentioning the name of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, or mentioning the oppressors of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, was prohibited within the ummah. During the time of Imam Sadiq, people were jailed, people were executed just for mention of those people who have oppressed Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. You have one event which is well recorded in history, and this is Murtabat bi Masjid al-Sahla. For those of us who have had the honor of going for ziyarah, may Allah Azza wa Jal grant all of us the opportunity to perform the ziyarah of Ahlul Bayt in the blessed lands, inshaAllah. But for those of you who have gone to Masjid Sahla, you find that from the mustahabbat of Masjid Sahla is that you have the spot, or you have the mihrab of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. This mihrab, it is mustahab and recommended, and from the adab and the akhlaq of Masjid al-Sahla, that when you go to this masjid, you will go to the mihrab of Imam al-Sadiq, which is in the middle of Masjid al-Sahla, and it is recommended to recite 2 rakat salah there. And in fact, if you were to follow the adab and the akhlaq of Masjid al-Sahla in its entirety, it says specifically 2 rakat salah between Maghrib and Isha. Where did this 2 rakat salah come from? This 2 rakat salah came during the time of Imam Sadiq, when there was a woman who was walking down the street. And as she was walking through the market, she tripped over a stone. And as she tripped over the stone and she injured her leg, when she fell down, she said, Allahumma al'an qatili Fatimah al-Zahra. How we have, when we stand up, when we sit down, we say, for example, Ya Ali. We have, when a negative occurrence would happen, or when a bala falls upon a person, they would send the la'na on the killers of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. All she said was, Allahumma al'an qatili Fatimah al-Zahra. The historians mention that there was Abbasi troops on the markets, policemen, mukhabarat, call them the spies, secret police. You see, the Bain al-Qawsayn, between brackets, the trademark of a dictatorial regime is that it oppresses and suppresses the citizens of its own state using secret police. The use of secret police in the governance of Amir al-Mu'mineen is different altogether. Because we've opened this, let me just say this. Do you know, as per the principles of governance for Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, do you know what is the role of a secret service within a country, within a nation? To keep an eye on the individuals serving the government. Your cabinet ministers, your prime ministers, your MPs, anyone who has taken any sort of civil role or public service and is getting paid, the secret service is supposed to keep watch on them to make sure that they're not doing any fraud. It's not about suppressing and using violence. This is in the government of Amir al-Mu'mineen. To where do we have the government of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Allah, tomorrow we'll speak more, inshallah, on that sense and connect it with the khutbah of Sayyidah Zahra, or the stance of Fadak. For in any case, the secret police hear this. They are all over the markets and they arrest this woman. They take her to the Abbasi ruler. This woman has to be imprisoned. For what sense? Because she sent la'na on the killers of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And la'na means she did dua against them. Ya Allah, don't have mercy on them. Nothing more than that. She was imprisoned. One of the companions comes running to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and he says to him, Yabna Rasulullah, this woman who is from your Shia, from your lovers, has just now been arrested and imprisoned. Imam Sadiq says, what happened? He said that she mentioned, or she sent dua against, she sent la'na on the killers of your grandmother, Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. She's been imprisoned. The hadith mentions that at this point, Imam Sadiq's tears began to roll down his cheeks. Immediately he went to Masjid al-Sahla, because this event happened when Imam Sadiq was in Kufa. He went to Masjid al-Sahla, recited the 2 rak'ah salah, praying for this woman to be released from imprisonment. The Rawi, the narrator, mentions the Imam did barely finished his final salam of 2 rak'ahs, and the news came that she has been released from prison. This incident has a number of lessons, but the one that I want to point towards is that even at the time of the Abbasi Empire, at the time of Imam as-Sadiq, which is about 130, 140 years after the martyrdom of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, century and a half later, it was still forbidden to speak about the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra. So when you find that there is all this secrecy and there is this open ban on speaking about the tragedy and the assault of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra, the natural consequence is that there are multiple dates that will be fed or multiple dates that will be suggested within an unofficial capacity. And this is something that is normal. Number 3, Ahibbai, the reason or another dimension through which we can understand why are there so many multiple dates in regards to the Shahada of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra. The Imams, and this might come to be seem strange on the onset, but the Imams themselves gave different dates to different companions. The Imams themselves intentionally gave different companions different dates to commemorate the istishhad of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra. One person would come, like we have the recording within the history, books of history, and if I'm not mistaken, Kitab Sulaim bin Qais al-Hilali, where the Holy Prophet says to Sayyidah Zahra that you will live for 40 days after me. And then you have hadith from Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam that says she lived for 75 days after the Holy Prophet. And another one that says 95 days or 90 days after the Shahada of Rasulullah. How is it that the Imam gives 2 separate dates? The Imam purposely gave 2 separate dates and different from the date given by Rasulullah. Ajib. A person asks, why would the Imams give different dates in regards to the Shahada of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen? Number of reasons. The first reason, and which is the most apparent reason, which is mentioned also in Kitab al-Kafi, we have a section within our fiqh that is known as the section of ikhtilafat within hadith. In our fiqh we have this. When a person comes to ask a religious question to the Imam to the same question would give 2 different people 2 different answers. 3 different people, 3 different answers. The question is one, but you find that the Imam answers them in totally different ways. When it came to aspects of worship, so a companion comes and asks Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Yabna Rasulullah, this person asked you one question, but you gave same question asked to you by 3 different people, but you gave 3 different answers. Why Yabna Rasulullah? Look at the answer of Imam Sadiq, and it helps you understand the turmoil and the tough period through which Shiaism, Tashayyu has gone through. So take pride in this faith that you subscribe to. He said, why Yabda Rasulullah? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, I intentionally have given them different answers such that they do not come under the radar of the oppressors. Ajib. How? He says, if I was to give my Shi'as to the questions that they ask me one unified answer, our Shia members, yani our believers, would become one unified body, one cohesive body. And if they were perceived to be a cohesive body by the dictators of the time, they would not wait for the blink of an eye until they come and they destroy everyone and sever everybody's head and take them away from this dunya. Hence, we give you multiple answers such that apparently in the eyes of the dictator, it seems that you are broken segments. Through your cohesion, you do not serve to be a threat to the eye of the dictator. And the same thing when it comes to the commemoration of Sayyidah Fatemiyah al-Zahra. Perhaps it was within the divine ilm of the Imam, rather than having one massive commemoration. There would be multiple commemorations, but in smaller numbers, in order or such that this commemoration would not be targeted by the oppressors of the time. Sometimes a decentralized, disintegrated strategy is the best strategy for your survival. It's not always about having concentrated, unified, decision-making, cohesive bodies. La, you have this even when it comes to principles of business management. You will find rather than having one centralized headquarter carrying out operations for all subsidiaries that last there, they have delegated and they break them down to different departments, so on and so forth. You find that this was a strategy that was employed by the Imams. So yet another answer that can be put forward, it was the Imams who wanted multiple dates for Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra in regards to her commemoration. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Another answer and the final answer. And I believe every answer gives us a certain dimension. The Imams purposely gave us multiple dates for the martyrdom of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen to reinforce the position of Sayyidah Zahra as being the equivalent of Laylatul Qadr. We have a hadith al-Sharif which is narrated by Imam al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, mentioned in Tafsir Furat al-Kufi, one of the most authentic tafasir regarding or going back to the school of Ahlul Bayt, where it is narrated in the tafsir of Suratul Qadr. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, al-laylu Fatimah, wal-qadru Allah. In the tafsir of Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, Imam Sadiq says, Laylatul Qadr, this layl, the night, is Fatimah, and the qadr is Allah. And the Imam goes on to say, فَمَنْ أَدْرَكَ فَاطِمَةَ حَقَّ مَعْرِفَتِهِ, or مَنْ عَرِفَ فَاطِمَةَ حَقَّ مَعْرِفَتِهِ فَقَدْ أَدْرَكَ لَيْلَةَ الْقَدْرِ. The one who has understood or got through ma'rifah of Fatimah has truly understood the grandeur of Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Qadr in its grandeur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna anzalnahu, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna anzalnahu fi Laylatil Qadr. Wa ma adraka ma Laylatul Qadr. And what do you know of Laylatul Qadr? A rhetorical statement meaning that the entire mankind cannot comprehend in its reality the essence of Laylatul Qadr. In the same way, the entire mankind cannot fully comprehend the status of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, which is why the Imam goes on to say, فَفُتِمَ or وَفُتِمَ الْخَلْقِ عَنْ مَعْرِفَتِهَا. The entire khalq is not able to comprehend in its true essence the grandeur of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. And there is even a reason between these 21 or 26 possible narrations or possible dates of the Shahada of Sayyidah Zahra, why 3 are mashhur. If you understand that Imam al-Sadiq says Sayyidah Zahra is like Laylatul Qadr, we also understand why we have 3 Fatimiyas. How many possible dates for Laylatul Qadr? 3. 19, 21 and 23. Why do we have 3 dates? In addition to hadith, the Quran in itself symbolizes this. The answer, sometimes you have people come and say, no, Laylatul Qadr is the last 10 nights. La, who said the 10 nights? We have from not apart from hadith, indication within the Quran itself that Laylatul Qadr is 3. And the indication is inside of Suratul Qadr itself. How many times does the word Laylatul Qadr appear in Suratul Qadr? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna anzalnahu fi Laylatul Qadr. Wama adraka ma. And then Laylatul Qadri khayrun min Alfi Shahr, until the end. How many times did the word Laylatul Qadr appear in Surah Al-Qadr? 3 times, which is why Laylatul Qadr for us is 19, 21 and 23. They don't have for the last 10 nights. And in the same way, like you have 3 nights for Laylatul Qadr, you have 3 nights for Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. The 40th, the 75th and the 95th. 8th of Rabi'ul Thani, 3rd of Jamadil or 13th of Jamadil Ula, and the 3rd of Jamadil Thani. فأحبائي, when it comes to upholding the commemoration of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, do not let the multiplicity of the dates become a reason for dispute. Or somebody saying the first Fatemiyah is not important and we'll do only the second and we'll do only the third. La, la. Does that you hear anybody saying we will do A'mal only on the 19th of Ramadan and not do the A'mal on the 23rd? La. We do it on the 23rd as well as the 19th and the 21st. And the same thing when it comes to upholding the commemoration of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. All 3 narrations have to be given absolute equality in weight and revival. You have an incident of Sayyid Ibn Tawus, rahmatullah alayh, one of the powerhouse great scholars of Shiaism. He says, and he was a historian and he was a researcher. Himself, he says, that I wanted to sit down and find out exactly which is the date of the Istishhad martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. So I began to carry out a historical research in terms through the manuscripts, my manuscripts, what we said in the beginning, and the dates, and getting down to the actual crux of the matter. He says, that night in my dream, I see Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra alayha salam. And I said, she asked me, what research are you embarking upon? He says to her, my lady, I am embarking upon a research to find out the exact date of your martyrdom, because there are 3 possible dates and 3 majalis that happen in your name. Do you know the reply of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra? She replies back to him and she says to him, and is it troublesome for you that my majalis are upheld 3 times in a year? Hence, ahibai, this effort that is put in, Jazakumullah khair al-jaza. And I want to speak about this later tomorrow. You know, when you make an effort, you give up your Friday nights, and there are 1,001 things you could be doing in Manchester on a Friday night. But you give up all your luxuries and you give up all your entertainment options to come to the majlis of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. Know that there is something special inside of you. I might be a sinner. I've got one inside of me. And maybe I'm not compliant in my hijab or not compliant in my salat and but no perfect. I might have inside of me. You might have 1,000 faults inside. But that you were here tonight for the love of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, that shows deep inside you, essential being, inside your soul, there is some sort of light that emanates. And it is because of the pure of this light, you have the tawfiq to come to this majlis. There are thousands, millions of Shias, lovers of Ahlul Bayt possibly around you, but they didn't have the tawfiq to come to a majlis. When there's a majlis of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, perhaps others are involved in chasing the dunya or in sin or so on and so forth, and there are those who have legit excuses, la ba'as. But when you have made a conscious effort and a decision to come here, know that deep inside this dust and this dirt of sins, there is a pure light inside of you. You know what that pure light is? That pure light speaks of potential. This is the spiritual potential within you. A person who doesn't have this, وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ فَحَنِيًا لَكُمْ. Congratulations to you. for having made this majlis, attended this majlis, organized this majlis, and for the nights that are there to come. And you will find that the participation in the majalis of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra has a direct impact on your destiny. This inshallah we will speak about tomorrow. Your presence in this majlis has an impact on your destiny. This is Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. Once a companion comes to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says to the Imam, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I was blessed with a newborn child in my house. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, with all happiness, asks him, was it a son or a daughter? He says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I was blessed with a daughter. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam asks him, and what did you name your daughter? He says, I named my daughter Fatima. When he said the name Fatima, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam began to weep and cry, and his tears came rolling down his cheeks. He says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, why do you weep? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says to him, oh man, if you have called your daughter Fatima, don't ever slap her. Allah. Intum Shia, intum Muwali, lovers of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, this ishara is enough for you, and you know where I want to go. He says, if you have named your daughter Fatima, do not slap her. He says, if you have named your daughter Fatima, do not ever abuse her. Allah. Imam As-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, pointing towards the tragedy of his mother, Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. I want to recite for you the entire or a big part of the narrative of how the assault happened on Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. And these 2 nights, tonight and tomorrow night, I want to take your heart back to Medina al-Munawwara. And it is as if each and every one of you is in Medina and you are sitting outside the house of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. You are sitting within the house of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra and you're watching these events unfold in front of you. The narrations mention that upon the Saqifa, upon the appointment of the leader of the Muslim Ummah in the Saqifa of Bani Sa'ad, Abu Bakr was named as the ruler of the Muslimin in opposition or against the ruling of Rasulullah in Eid al-Ghadir. When the bay'ah was given to him and majority of the Muslims came under his fold, the second one, Umar ibn Khattab, asked Abu Bakr, why do you not take the bay'ah from the allegiance of Ali Talib? Your rulership has no legitimacy. So the first one asked the second one and said, who should we send to the house of Ali to get the bay'ah? Omar replied by saying, let us send Kunfud, because he is one of the people from the Tulaqa, the freed slaves, who is jaf, who is hard in his nature, lacks any akhlaq, and is rude and hard in his behavior. So they sent Kunfud to the house of Ali and Fatima to gain the bay'ah from Amir al-Mu'mineen. The narrations mention that Kunfud, twice he went to the house and from outside he cried out, O Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Khalifa of Rasulullah asks you to give the bay'ah to him. Twice Amir al-Mu'mineen refused and said, that title belongs to me. The third time, Kunfud went back to the house of Ali and Fatima and he cried out. He says, the Khalifa says, O Ali, come out and give the bay'ah, for indeed if you do not give the bay'ah, we shall forcefully take you outside of the house. At this moment, Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra came behind the door and she cried out, أحرج عليكم أن تدخل بيتي بغير أذن. She said to him that I, Fatima, prohibit you from entering my house without my permission. Kunfud went back to the masjid and he said to both the Shaykhain that the third time I went, Fatima came behind the door and she has forbidden us to enter the house. At this point, the Taghut of the Ummah stood up and said, Ma lana walin nisa. He said, what do we have to do with the opinions of the women? So the Taghut asked him, what shall we do? He said, we shall round up 300 men. We shall carry firewood and place them around the house and light the house on fire if Ali refuses to give the bay'ah. So the Jibt said to him, i'tini bihi bi'a'naf al-anf wa in aba faqtulhu. So the Taghut said to Omar and to Kunfud and the rest of the people, bring Ali to me in the most violent of ways, and if he refuses, then kill him. Ibn Ubay says that 300 people marched towards the house of Fatima, galloping on their horses, spears hitting across the grounds of Medina. I felt there was a tremor. At the very head of them was Ibn Sahak, who had a torch lit with fire. He came and stood outside the house of Fatima and Ali, and he began to cry out, Ya Ali, ukhruj min al-bayt. O Ali, come out of the house and give the bay'ah to the Khalifa of the Muslims, and if you do not come out, we shall break into your house. At this moment, Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, when she heard the threats, she came and she stood behind the door. The hadith mentioned that she had a bandage around her head. She was weak and pale, weeping upon the martyrdom of her father Rasulullah. She came and she stood behind the door and she said to him, Mada taqulun wa mada taf'alun. She said to them, what are you saying and what are you doing gathered outside my house? At this moment Ibn Sahak cried out, O Fatima, why have you come behind the door while Ali sits behind the hijab? So Fatima replied back to him and she said to him, Tughyanuka ya Omar wa ilzamuka al-hujja. I have come behind the door in order to be a witness over you and to give the right of the opinion for Amir al-Mu'mineen. He then said to her, tell Ali to come out, else we shall burn down the house. So she replied back, Sayyidah Fatima said, will you burn down my house while my children Hassan and Hussein are inside of it? He replied by saying, wa in, even if your children are there, we shall burn down your house. She then Sayyidah Zahra began to cry. And she said to him, Abi hizb shaitan tukhawifni wa kana hizb shaitan da'ifa. Do you threaten me with the party of shaitan? Indeed, the party of shaitan is weak. When he heard this, he said to Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, Da'ana wa hamaqat al-nisa. He said to her, leave us with the vain talk of the women and the stupid talk of the women. At this moment, Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra cried out and she said, I shall complain to Rasulullah the manner in which that you talk to me. So he replied back, Ibn Sahak replied back and said, O Fatima, Muhammad is not here anymore and the angels are not here anymore. They shall not come down with any more commandments or with any more acts of prohibition. So leave your vain talks. Sayyidah Fatima complained and cried out, Ya Rasulullah, you be witness on how this ummah is treating your daughter. At this moment they cried out and he said, tell Ali to come out, else we shall burn down the house on you. Sayyidah Zahra began to weep from behind the door. When the people heard her weeping, a number of them left the house and went back towards Masjidun Nabawi, but a number of them remained, including Mughira ibn Shu'bah, Khalid bin Walid and Uthman ibn Affan. At this moment, the narrations mention that Ibn Khattab lit the door of Fatima on fire. Allah, Allah, ya Shi'at Fatima. Sayyidah Zahra says, as the door began to burn, the smoke began to come into the house and I began to choke from the flames and the fumes. As she was behind the door, the narrations mention that Ibn Sahak kicked open the door. Sayyidah Fatima Zahra was behind the door and she got crushed between the door and the wall. She cried out, Wa Muhammadah. The manner in which Ibn Khattab kicked the door, the grip of Sayyidah Fatima was crushed. Allah, Allah, ya Shia. Sulaim bin Qais al-Hilali in his book mentions that when Fatima was crushed between the door and the wall, there was a nail that was protruding from the wooden door. When she became crushed, this nail punctured the lung of Fatima. Allah, Allah, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra was crushed between the door and the wall, the narration mentions. And then Ibn Khattab entered into the house. He pushed over the burning door and he slapped Fatima across the face. Imam al-Sadiq says, when he slapped my mother Fatima, her eye became reddened and her eye became swollen until the day of her death. He then slapped Fatima a second time, and this time when he slapped her across the face, the earring of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra underneath her hijab broke, falling down to the ground. As soon as he done this, Mughira ibn Shu'bah entered and he hit Fatima on the shoulder with the edge of his sword, and then came in Khalid bin Walid. With the handle of his sword, he hit the side of Fatima, and then Kunfud came in. He whipped Sayyidah Fatima Zahra. He whipped Sayyidah Fatima Zahra across the shoulder and the back. Have you seen when the people whip the animals? It rips open the hide, it rips open the skin, leaving a mark. What happened to the shoulder and the back of Fatima? The narrations mention that Fatima continued to cry and she called out, Wa Muhammadah. As she cried out Rasulullah's name, the narrations mention Ibn Sahak went to her فَرَفَسَهَا رَفْسًا شَدِيدًا.